This is Live from the Table, the official podcast of the world-famous Comedy Cellar, coming at you on Sirius XM 99 Raw Dog, and as a podcast wherever you get your podcasts. How are you? This is Dan Naturman. I'm with Periel Aschenbrand. She's the producer
Hi.
of the show. And Noam Dworman is with us. He is the owner of the ever-expanding Comedy Cellar. Noam, how do you do? Noam is looking at his phone. Go ahead, sorry.
I'm doing great. I'm just looking at an old picture of me and my wife from I don't know, 19.
And had it 19.
It's hard. I have to figure it out. But
probably the 90s. You met her in the 90s, right?
Yeah, I met her in the 90s. Late 90s it would be.
How do you feel looking at that picture of your younger self?
I don't mind. I mean, I'm outraged at the idea of getting older, you know.
But, yeah.
I don't think I ever looked quite like that. There's something about that picture. I put it through like a photo restoration thing. I'm asking them to bring up the original from the office so I could see it. But I was a little boy. I looked like a little boy.
Well, I'm always sad to see older pictures of myself because, you know, the differences, even from 5 years ago, you know, the differences can be startling. And time does march on. Anyway, the Comedy Cellar is getting a new website. I think that's worth mentioning. It's a gorgeous new website.
Is it gorgeous?
I think so.
I didn't see it.
It's the current website is
I haven't seen it. Go ahead.
The current website's I know some people like it because it's very simple and down home and kind of no frilsy. But this new website is extremely splashy. And when is it? Is it? I guess it hasn't gone live online yet.
Oh, so the old website, you know, the old website, that website was a new website, I don't know, 10 years ago. And I went to a company to do that. It was the same company that did Howard Stern's website. I guess I shouldn't say their name on the air, even though, whatever. And I didn't have a good experience. And they charged me a lot of money. And, you know, it was like what I imagine a prostitute would be. Like, you know, they didn't really care about me. They just wanted, you know, like I'd paid my time and they just wanted me out. So they gave me a website as quickly as possible. I was never really happy with it, but at least it had like a time capsule look to it. So I felt like even though everybody criticized the website, it was still something about it that it wasn't like, if you look at the other clubs, a lot of them have like template websites. It looks like they downloaded a template. It looks like a strip mall type club. So, but then finally this website, so I was able to work with somebody who's kind of a friend of mine and
the new one.
Yeah, and it's a labor of love for him. And he's a graphic designer, and I have another guy who's responsible for the coding. And this website is really going to utilize all our old pictures and stuff like that, and we're digitizing video and stuff like that. So to really impart the feel of the Comedy Cellar as not just a stage, but as a gathering place for comedians, a scene, like a historic.
Yeah, and
location.
so when you go on the website, you'll see different pictures. There'll be a montage of pictures, like what do they call that when
Montage.
like a slideshow, I guess.
Yeah.
Of pictures from the history of the Comedy Cellar. Everybody from Jerry Seinfeld to Robin Williams to, I mean, you name it. I guess is you right, Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah, and most of the pictures are them not on stage, of them hanging out.
Okay.
Which that was, I think, the key decision that I made was that because at first he was just giving me all these pictures of everybody on stage.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, you know, actually, when I look at the pictures of the club, I'm much more drawn to the pictures of everybody hanging out in the olive tree, you know, various people hanging out together, laughing, whatever it is. Like, so I really weighted it much more towards pictures of these people just hanging out. There's a great picture like Jerry Seinfeld going over his notes in the stairs, like you checking your phone at the podcast table, stuff like that. I like that stuff. Pictures and amazing combinations like Louis and Robin Williams and Jim Norton and Bill Crystal and someone else famous is in that picture. Like just crazy combinations of people all hanging out.
And there'll also be old clips on the website of.
Well, it may not be when we first put the website up, but I definitely am digitizing hundreds of videotapes. So I'm going to put some. Well, I don't think I'm going to have sound because I don't really want to play old performances. I have to get permission for everything. Blah 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 blah. But just like old, crappy quality video, a few seconds here, a few seconds there, of various people on stage. I think it's fun to see.
Weren't you posting some old videos though on the Instagram
Those
site?
I got permission for those.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I saw there was a Mitch Hedberg clip, I think, but you said there's no sound.
Yeah, no, there's no sound. Yeah, I got it. You put me in touch with his.
He played here very very seldom, as I recall. Mitch Hedberg.
Yeah, but he played here
Yeah, that's going back obviously quite a ways.
for a while. He was here a lot.
Oh, okay, yeah. Maybe that was during the time that I wasn't here a lot. That's why
He took your spot for a while.
No. There was a time where I was in and out of this club through the '90s. I was sort of in and out of this club. I was in, I was out, I was in, I was out, and then the early 2000s, I started to become a fixture.
So I was looking at.
Staggeringly long time ago.
It is a long time. So what do you think about Tucker Carlson being fired, Dan?
Well, you know that I don't necessarily follow these things closely, but obviously you have strong opinions.
No, I don't. What do you think, Periel?
I couldn't be more pleased.
Why? What, you thought he deserved to be fired?
I don't know. I mean, I don't think he ever deserved to be on the air to begin with. I mean, I have no idea what, if he did something or what, but I think he's disgusting and a horrible, just awful. Who wants it? Just spewing.
Megyn Kelly has a discussion about this topic on her podcast today.
Yeah.
It was a little bit more.
Well, what did she say?
A little bit more
Does she like him?
I don't want to talk about it. But anyway, I would like to get on somebody. This is a very interesting topic, Tucker Carlson being fired and Don Lemon being fired.
Well, I know that Roy Wood mentioned it. He's doing the White House Correspondents' Dinner. That's not a secret, I don't think.
I don't think so.
No, he was
Not
here.
anymore.
He was. I don't think it's a secret. I mean,
No, it can't be a secret.
He was here working out the material for it.
The material is a secret.
Yeah, a material I'm not going to get into, but he mentioned. I think he mentioned Don Lemon and Tucker, but it was very good. I don't know if you saw it.
No,
I think he's going to do well. It's just weird because he goes on stage and he says he has to preface it by saying this might be of some interest. He has to preface it by saying, "Okay, I'm doing this event, so I'm just doing jokes for this event." Then he says, "Good to be here at the White House Correspondents' Dinner." So, and then he's doing the jokes as if he's really there. So it's a little odd because he's saying like, President Biden is here. Hello, Mr. President. In front of the Comedy Cellar audience, but they enjoyed it. I think
they had stopped having comedians, as far as I know, hosting that after Michelle Wolf's performance.
When was her? When was that?
This is like 6 years ago.
Wait, Michelle's was 6 years ago? That can't be right.
It was like Trump's first year or something like that.
Didn't she just?
That is astounding. Yeah. I mean, of all the shit that happened a long time ago that I thought was last year.
It's 2017 or 2018.
Didn't she just skewer him?
Well, yeah. So she had asked me to look at the video of her set before and tell me what I thought and tell her what I thought of it, and it was great. But I say, that joke about Sarah Sanders.
2018.
That joke about Sarah Sanders being from the what was the show that she compared to with the? What's the show about the poor people? Nicole, what's the name of the show?
I'll find it.
TV show.
I'm still reeling from the fact that was 5 years ago.
What show? Can you say a little bit more about it?
I've never seen it. Anyway, she compared it to a character from this TV show. And essentially, saying she's ugly and fat and whatever it is. And I said, that's pretty harsh, Michelle. I don't know if that's how that's going to go over. So I did identify the one joke which would be the most controversial, but I had no idea. I mean, that was a huge event.
Handmaid's Tale?
What's it?
The
Handmaid's Tale. Yeah, Handmaid's Tale. Yeah. Good. But Michelle knew what she was doing. I mean, that really catapulted her career at that time. It was a funny routine she did. But I'm just never partial to really mean jokes. I never have been. In this digitizing process, I found some old Lisa Lampanelli sets.
Mm-hmm.
And my God, the stuff that she used to say, just the
they were
really harsh ethnic jokes.
They were ethnic stereotype jokes.
But I remember at the time being uncomfortable with them.
Oh, really?
I remember telling my father, the stuff she's saying, and my father said, "No, she's great." My father loved her, and he was right. She turned into a big star after that.
Yeah.
But I was always a little squeamish about that stuff. Not offended. Offended wouldn't be the word. Just there's something about it that I didn't like. I feel not. I feel like not good laughing at some of that stuff.
Right.
And you know me, I really don't care, but for whatever reason, but you could never say that stuff now. I mean, when Dice Clay was here not long ago and tried to camouflage his old material by saying, I used to be able to say this, but I
Yeah.
can't say it anyway. It didn't go over. He had trouble with it. Other stuff he did went over, but the old stuff.
What was some of the? Do you recall some of the jokes that Lisa was doing?
No, I'll find it for you. I mean, just
Well,
really,
Don Rickles used to do that. I mean, Don Rickles. I saw an old roast of Don Rickles. I don't know who they were roasting, but of course, he's roasting everybody in the room along with the roastee, and he was saying stuff like. He said something like Isabel Sanford. I think remember Isabel Sanford, the actress, played Wheezy Jefferson.
yeah.
He said, "Okay, you're gonna clean up afterwards," or something
Oh,
like that.
God.
Like things that are just he kissed. At one point, he kissed Sammy Davis Jr. He said, "I love this man." He kissed them on the cheek, and he says, "Did any of it rub off?"
Oh yeah.
I mean, just stuff that you cannot even believe. But
Oh, there was,
but that was, I assume, roughly the kinds of stuff that Lisa was
It was
saying.
worse. Lisa's stuff was
Oh, Lisa's stuff was worse.
So there's a funny routine. I mean, funny, but where it was like Sammy Davis Jr., Dean Martin, and Frank Sinatra,
Mhm.
and Dean Martin's like, and Sammy Davis Jr. jumps into Dean Martin's arms,
Mhm.
and they walk towards Sinatra, and Sinatra says, "I'd like to thank the NAACP for
Oh,
this
yeah,
award."
okay.
And that always struck me as kind of funny.
Yeah.
And not only because Sammy Davis Jr. obviously was in on the joke, which doesn't really cleanse it, but it's cute. Like it wasn't like mean,
What does it mean?
But some of the mean stuff, I don't know. Like people might think I'm like, because I'm so like anti-woke and everything that I think everything is fine. I do think everything is fine, but that doesn't mean personally I've always.
But let's
enjoyed
be clear: these jokes weren't brilliantly written jokes.
Yeah.
It's not like people say, "Oh, you can't," that the comedy's not what it used to be. I mean, it's true you can't say those things anymore for good or for bad. But let's be clear: these weren't brilliantly written jokes. These were basic, easy jokes, like Isabel Sanford going to clean afterwards or whatever,
Yeah.
stuff like that. Did it rub off? I mean, these aren't brilliant jokes. These are easy jokes, and I don't know that comedy is diminished, even if you believe that we shouldn't be so politically correct, whether you believe that or not. I don't think comedy's been diminished because these jokes are no longer being told.
They're also funny.
They weren't good jokes.
They're funny in certain contexts. So in a roast situation, so like for instance, we've seen roasts where, some of the black jokes can be really like outrageous. Like I don't know. Can I say what like things that have said?
No.
Like you can't say them. I mean, they're on the roasts, but and within that context of the roast, I will laugh at them because the roast has changed. It's different rules for a roast.
Mm-hmm.
So the same joke which I would laugh at a roast, wouldn't laugh at ordinarily. So like in a roast, did it rub off? Or I think Rich Voss compared some black comic to King Kong one time in a roast, whatever. Like you think you're just not supposed to say.
Well, that's dangerously
but-
close to Shane Gillis, which got Roseanne Barr in trouble.
Right, but the thing is, when you're at a roast, it's like there's rules. And it's like there's a Marcus of Queensberry rules in boxing match, but a roast is MMA or whatever it is, and in a roast, everybody knows. Listen, you can say whatever you want. The stuff you can't say, part of the fun of the roast is that now you can say it all.
Well, even in a roast, there's limits. Jason Salmon is with us. Jason, we were discussing. You ever see these old Don Rickles roasts where he's like making really crude racial and ethnic jokes?
Yeah, they feel so dated. It's almost like a time capsule. Like it's almost like a I think Sarah Silverman summed it up. She's like, if you haven't been insulted by Don Rickles, then you aren't in comedy. Like she felt like that was like this sort of coronation of her as a comic to have been insulted by him. It's almost like he spoke a language that went out of fashion before he died, but he was the only one who still spoke it and could get away
Well,
with
then
it.
Lisa Lampanelli took up the mantle. We were discussing her
Yeah.
before you got here. But we were saying that you can't really do that anymore. I don't think you could get away with.
I think
That's all.
with roasts, there's a weird, because there was a stretch of time where that was a big thing going on. They were putting stuff online all the time. They were having all these roast battles. And part of the thing was, it's like, this is a place where that these two people are friends. So they are play hating each other.
Mhm.
And it sort of broke away all that. You're like, oh, this is not based on hatred. This is based on, can I get deep into you? You know, can I hurt you, sort of? You know, can I do a thing that makes you go, oh no?
Well, that's what Noam was saying. The rules are different. Anyway, Jason Salmon is with us, a comedian, actor, writer from Texas. Don't mess with Texas.
Don't.
He's
do
been in
not.
Orange is the New Black, Red Dead Redemption
Yeah.
2.
Have you not played that?
No. Oh, that's a
Okay.
video game.
It
30
is.
Rock.
It is.
A bunch of automobile commercials.
Yeah. If you've seen an automobile commercial in the last decade, I was probably in one of them.
Well, that's got to be good
Yeah.
for your bottom line.
It is. The commercial world.
I never
Glorious.
If Judy Gold were here, she'd be saying me, because she has an issue with me relating things back to me.
It's hilarious that stuck with you. Even what
I thought it was
back
un-
in the '60s was me.
Well, I thought it was unfair. I thought it was unfair. I mean, I am host of the podcast. If my
Yeah.
life has relevance to it,
I feel like she's
but
got a
I think
point.
I never did have any luck with commercials. But you have that look of just Southern,
I have the cautionary tale look.
NASCAR.
That's my job in commercials. I am the guy you put up next to your product, and you're like, if you don't buy our product, this is the direction your life
This is
goes.
your trajectory.
That was it. I'm cautionary tale guy.
Well, you look like your average NASCAR fan.
I will tell you, I've met tons of NASCAR drivers. I have done tons of NASCAR commercials. Yeah.
And more than that, you look like a black and white photo of you would look very similar to a Civil War Tinta.
You know what? They showed a thing they were talking about when Kevin McCarthy was being voted on for speaker, and he went to like 30-something votes or something like that. They're like, oh, the previous most votes was this guy, and it literally, I was like, that looks like me. That looks so much like, and he was in a Civil War outfit. I was like, all right, yeah.
Yeah, you look like you fought for the gray.
Okay.
His new stand-up special, Biscuits and Gravity.
Yeah.
Not gravy, Gravity. Is out
Gravity.
on April 27th. It's out. Where is it out? On YouTube? Or-
YouTube coming out on YouTube.
That's how it's being
Yeah.
done nowadays.
That is,
You do it
yeah.
yourself and you put it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
I got a call. My wife says, call me ASAP.
Uh-oh.
Okay, well, hope everything's okay. But
Well, I could take the beginning of it here. I'm sure she's
She's listening in.
she's oblivious to. Well, I mean, I hope it's not tragedy. Otherwise, you cut it out of. Hi, is everything okay? I'm doing a podcast. Well, what's the headline? Oh, it's good. It's, okay. I'll call you later. Okay, bye.
All right.
okay, no tragedy.
That's
Everybody's
good.
Found
fine.
some large checks we hadn't cashed. This is
Okay.
That is the opposite of tragedy.
This-
That is
Tragedy at all.
literally the opposite
No,
of tragedy.
Biscuits and Gravity. Now,
Yes.
is that so? What does that mean? Biscuits and Gravity. Do you-
That's, I mean, all of my subject matter is, I mean, I talk about everything. I talk about race. I talk about generational issues. I talk about gender.
what's your feeling about race?
I feel like I look so much like the opposing side of any racial harmony that
Right.
that I feel like I have to work a little extra hard. You know,
Now,
most,
but
most
y-
people like say, "Oh, I have a black friend." I go, "I have a gay Muslim black friend." That's what I.
Well, you also have the accent.
Yeah. The nothing about me. Like I always to an audience. I feel like I just have to go, I see it too, whatever you see, you know? And look, in certain places, it's like, okay.
The elephant is in the room. Let's discuss it.
Yeah, I mean, that especially in New York. I mean, especially, you know, especially the further out in Brooklyn you get, the more I'm like, hey, I get what you see. Just hear me out. Let me talk.
Well, Vic
you know?
Henley had the late Vic Henley, who
Yeah,
used to work here.
love Vic Henley. Yeah.
He didn't look quite as
He did.
Southern as you because he didn't have the mustache.
Right. Yeah, and he had that gray hair.
Yeah,
You know, he
but
looked
he had-
like a.
he
Not
had-
always used to be blonde.
But he had
Oh,
a
that's
thicker.
right,
He had a
that's right.
thicker.
I never knew him blonde.
He had a
ever.
thicker accent. I believe he was from Alabama.
He did. He
So
was from-
Alabama trumps Texas, I think, on the scale of
It does.
what you're talking about. But he had that accent, but he was quite a liberal guy.
Oh, very liberal. He was.
You know, I don't know if you'd
extremely
qualify
liberal.
yourself as liberal.
I always qualify myself as moderate. I feel like the spectrum is moving and not really me. So
A lot of
I
people
mean,
feel that way. So, so you woke up conservative, even though you really always thought you were moderate.
I woke up more liberal than conservative, definitely. Yeah, but I always saw myself as moderate. But the problem is like the spectrum keeps shifting, you know. So it's like
Wait, you're moderate now. You find yourself considered more liberal?
yeah.
Because maybe where you live.
Well, right. You live in New York City. I mean, I'm from Texas. So many of my friends just unfriended me completely because I was like, hey, maybe the guy died because somebody stood on his neck for a while, you know. And they're like, whoa, that's and they like.
So you're a
left
radical.
me. yes. I'm more of a mathematician. That's what I'm really best at. So I just sort of go, all right, percentages.
Do you discuss gravity in your special, or is that just?
No, but science. So I thought gravity, Biscuits and Gravity was a good pun to sort of go, hey, this is like a dumb guy talking about smart things. I don't know. It's sort of the vibe I give off.
Better than Biscuits and Science.
Yeah, Biscuits and Science or Biscuits and Test Tubes didn't work. I tried that with a market audience. Didn't. I got a lot of bad feedback.
Do you talk about your dad at all?
I don't in this. Well, I do. I talk about conversations that I had with my. Well, I talk about explaining gender to my dad. You know,
how'd you do that?
I related it to. He asked me about.
Well, apparently Periel knows something about your father that.
Yes, yeah. My dad.
maybe we
My
should-
dad, in fairness, has Alzheimer's. He's had Alzheimer's for a while, and so he's progressed, and he's pretty close to the end. And it's it's one of those things that, for me, was something that I'm an optimist, so it's sort of like challenged the concept of being an optimist for me. So it's been an interesting journey with that, but I'm in a very peaceful place, and I was.
Well, you also put up all of these beautiful videos of you together.
Yeah, I feed my dad when I go to visit him, because he's at that state where he can't feed himself.
He can't do anything.
What does he do when you're not there?
Well, I mean, he's at a facility, so everybody. I mean, it's not. If he was depending on me to feed him, he would be. I mean,
He might, because he can't.
yeah.
Well, that sounds pretty serious.
What's weird
You
is
better get home.
CrossFit. You're not gonna believe this, but CrossFit when I'm not there. That's what he's into. That's what he really. It's basically either me feeding him or extreme sport.
How old is he?
He's 75.
That is very young.
It is
what you're
young,
describing.
and he's legitimately had.
So he started in.
He's
his
had
60s.
late stage Alzheimer's for over a decade.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you know for over a decade?
Yeah. That's when it got diagnosed. By
Well, when
the
did you
doctor.
first start to see symptoms?
Probably about a half of a year before then.
But that's
You just noticed that you didn't realize it was symptoms until the doctor diagnoses it, and you go, oh.
So we're talking about a man in his mid-60s.
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is
What kind of symptoms?
quite young.
He just was.
Well, before you say the symptoms, you have some hypochondriacs in the room
Okay.
that don't like to hear about symptoms.
Well,
'Cause then
believe me,
I
as
want
far as his symptoms,
Whose symptoms?
are my dad's
I'm kidding.
symptoms. Whose symptoms? Well, whenever I say on this podcast, whenever I say his, we know that Dan is the first choice. But no, my dad's symptoms were just he was just being mindless, but he had just retired. So
What did he do?
He was a school administrator, so he was a principal for a long time, and then he was a superintendent of a school system, and he was really good at like going in failing schools and like helping them structure themselves. He was like a human investment banker where they go and restructure something to keep them from going bankrupt.
So have you checked his DNA, like the APOE gene? And all
I
that
have,
stuff?
yeah. I'm slightly greater risk, but I also have none of the lifestyle factors that he had. Like he only loved red meat, bacon. He didn't drink a lot, but he like.
I just read an article that all those lifestyle factors are overblown. They don't-
Well,
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I don't know. I definitely
I'm
think.
just messing with you.
One thing they,
I don't know.
one thing. I mean, exercise, obviously,
Exercise.
Yeah, and he wasn't an avid exerciser.
and exercising your mind. So they say learning a second language. This is not why I study French, but I guess it might be a side benefit.
Well, I'm not gonna lie. I've seen some of the symptoms in you since I've been here. So keep at the French.
Okay.
That's all.
So tell us now.
I did get a joke out of it, but I don't want to me this thing. But if anybody's interested in hearing the joke,
too late.
Let's hear your joke, and then I want to hear about his dad's gender. Go ahead.
well, my joke was that I'm studying Spanish because I read that it delays the onset of Alzheimer's disease. So if I get it, I'll get it later, and then I guess I'll have it in 2 languages. You
Yes.
know, and people be like, Mr. Naturman, is this your wife? Yo no sé. So that's the joke. It's not one of my killers, but it's
solid.
Now,
it's
why-
a B+ joke.
Why are
It's
you?
not my cousin Sheila level joke.
Why are you explaining gender to your senile father?
I am not.
Are we supposed to use the
Okay.
word
It's
senile?
nice.
It sounds like
It's
a
nice.
politically
It's a nice.
Can't say senile.
it sounds
No,
like a politically
I-
incorrect word
Here's the
to
thing.
me.
You can say senile. He's not senile. He's suffering from Alzheimer's. Senile would be. I think that's more of a specific. There's medical terminology for that. I don't.
I thought
honestly-
senile was
I-
the general
I
term
think
for all those. For all those.
I will
things.
say that, and I don't.
Just
I,
fucking can't say anything anymore. I don't know.
I don't
No,
know
no,
if
no.
you can say it or not. To me, it feels
I just think
like
it's incorrect.
it
I think
feels
it's-
like an old word that I don't hear anymore.
senile always feels pejorative.
I had a mulatto friend, and she was senile.
I don't hear the word senile.
You're not allowed to say she.
I guess I should.
All right.
I'm not hearing the word senile a lot anymore. I hear dementia.
Yeah, well, I think senile was when nobody knew what the specifics of brain degeneration was, and now we have names for everything. So
It's one of the things that I hate more than anything
yeah,
is this thing that all of a sudden words that were never ever used in any kind of derogatory
Right.
way. A memo is handed out. You can't say this anymore, and then you get you get in trouble for it. Like was
Right.
it last week?
Oh yeah, Noam got furious.
You
I
can't
got, like,
say
a flurry
you
of
can't
emails
say
about
committed
this.
suicide.
Well, first of
Really?
all, that's just one article.
Yeah, no.
One.
you have to say
one,
was iffy about suicide.
No, like died by suicide
Right.
because committed suicide sounds like an act-
crime.
yes, and
Yeah.
died by suicide sounds like he was the victim.
Ah.
But it's not that you can't say it. It's one guy wrote an article suggesting that you don't say it.
Right,
No,
but this is typical of Periel's
no,
type.
No, don't start with. don't
Okay, let me just
start
talk.
with
Let me just
that.
tell you guys to say. First of all, there are certain people, and you really are. I love you. I was just defending you the other day, but
To who?
you're a husband. But but no, honestly, but
That's funny.
you are exactly this type of person.
Here we go.
Some journalist, somebody writes
Mm-hmm.
something, and this because of the pipeline of how it's disseminated, as
Yeah.
opposed to just saying it at dinner table, some particular publication, some blog, this becomes like a commandment, and then people of a particular political persuasion, Periel, they adopt this like they don't think for themselves.
Yeah.
Oh, you shall not say committed suicide.
Yeah.
And they'll say he committed suicide. What is the matter with you? You're not supposed. I'm like, why can't you say committed suicide?
Yeah.
You're just not supposed to say
No,
it
no,
anymore.
no.
Yeah. Now listen. I did some work on
I'm
it. Hold
going
on.
to defend myself.
You're going to. You'll have
Okay.
time. So I looked at. I looked at ChatGPT and did hard restricted Google searches. Committed acts of kindness.
Yeah.
Committed. The word committed is used in many
Mm-hmm.
contexts other than committed murder.
The problem is,
Wait.
okay.
Obviously, in the committed murder,
Yeah.
it's the word murder which is the problem. It is not committed. The verb that you use to describe it. You can commit bad things. You can,
Yeah.
like I said, you can commit acts of kindness, whatever it is. They think they can soften the connotation of the fact that
Mm-hmm.
somebody took their own life
Yeah.
by changing the word committed. He died by oh, that's not so bad. Like,
Well,
I
well-
thought he committed, so he died by
Yeah.
oh, okay. It's so
Yeah.
stupid. It's so fucking stupid. And they do this all the time, and they do it in political contexts, and people like Periel that don't think for themselves.
No, it's not.
They heed this. And this happened, like we talked about before, this happened
I'm glad you said you loved her.
look,
yeah, this happened when they changed the word. Now, this is going to be shocking to the listeners, but you ask your parents, they'll tell you I'm right. This happened when they changed the word from it sounds horrible even saying it out loud
It does.
to Asian.
By the way, I just did a joke about that on our show. We'll discuss it in the bonus episode.
Now, when I was a kid, there was only one word to describe
Right.
the descendants, essentially of China, the cultures that descended from
Right.
China throughout throughout Asia. But it didn't include Indians and Pakistanis
Right.
or Israelis who were also from Asia.
Right.
It included those
The
people.
Far East.
Yeah. So, and then one day they said, well, no, you can't say say Asian. How come? Well, okay, didn't you see there was a PBS thing where like Like you can't say, there was never really any reason. And
Yeah.
the people who were latest getting the memo were the Asians themselves, because for years you could still go to any Chinese restaurant, Asian this, I mean, this, that.
Well, they're allowed to say it. I remember in
No, they would. I used to have friends who were from China. They would continually use it. Yeah, he's my. Like they used it. They were. It was kind of like the way Juanita reacts to Latinx. Latinx could have been the next version of it, except it just didn't take. Bunch of people said we shouldn't say Latino and say Latinx. It's really exactly what happened with the. And they have some crazy rationale, but the rationale doesn't really hold up because the word was never derogatory. Because rugs are. Okay, that doesn't mean that. Like that's not a like.
Okay, but
you can have Israeli salad. That's not a reason you don't call people Israeli. No, salad is Israeli. Yes, but anyway. So, but what's really galling about this particular example is that now
you talk about the committed suicide.
No, the Asian thing is, and this is interesting. Now you see on college campuses, Indians and Pakistanis joining into like student clubs with Chinese and Japanese, the Asian club. And this is simply because they changed the word. These cultures have some things in common, but very little in common. They never considered themselves part of the same group.
I don't think they generally consider themselves part of the same group. There might be an example where they have a group in college campuses, but I think it's a general matter. When I was in college, there was a Korean Cultural Society. There was
You're almost my age, Dan. It's
the Caribbean American Student Association. I mean, people. I don't think it's because the word Asian came into vogue that all of a sudden people from India feel themselves closer to people from China.
Well, when you say Asian now, nobody knows what you mean.
Well, they do.
When you said we knew what you meant.
Well, you wouldn't call an Indian Asian.
Yes, they do.
You call them East Asian or East Indian.
Well, now they have to put the comment. What kind of Asian are you? Oh, I'm South Asian.
It's not that huge a burden, to be honest. But
see, I feel like the problem is the generalities. Every time we start generalizing, no, I mean, but that's the thing. Like when you talk about Asians. That's a general term. If I was just saying, oh, this Korean friend of mine, nobody's like, there's no problem the more specific you get.
Well, but the countries of China, Japan, and Korea,
right,
particularly, they actually have tremendous cultural similarity. They study the same Chinese characters throughout them. Like that, they have their difference. And I'm no expert on it, but I know just from knowing people from those cultures.
What he's not saying is that they look similar.
Well, they look similar too, but that's not the point. The point is that they do all come from the same place, and much of the Chinese stuff in various ways is still throughout Asian culture.
Right.
Not Indian and Pakistani.
Southeast Asia, you're talking about.
Yes, well, Asia, whatever. So anyway, but that's just we're really off the subject.
Well,
but anyway, when they change these words.
So the key,
but
what we're trying to get at is, I explain gender to my dad by comparing him to an Asian woman.
Okay.
Now you mean Asian?
Southeast Asian, of course.
Not Thai.
Well, Noam just went on a
my dad's like, as long as they're not a northerner, I don't care which continent.
You mean like a Thai woman? Yeah, like a little boy.
Well, I just would like. Noam just went on a fairly long monologue. I would like to put in my 2 cents.
After he tells about his gender, why were you explaining gender? By the way, look up senile. It's exactly what it is. Senile is showing weakness or disease of old age, especially a loss of mental faculties. That's what senile means.
Does it say?
It doesn't say that you can't say it anymore.
I don't hear it anymore.
But I'll be on the lookout for it.
I don't hear it anymore, but maybe.
I will say that I think that's a factor of we just know so much more about brain science now. I mean, that word was around when we thought that if somebody, was stuttered, we're like, oh, they might need to be put.
You don't say stuttered anymore.
What do you say?
I'm kidding.
Spoke swiftly and repetitive.
So how you're saying gender to your father?
So no, so my dad was asking. He was confused, like about he's like, what's going on? What's this and what's that? And he was always curious. That's the thing that I loved about my dad. Still do. He's not really curious anymore, but he would ask questions. He's like, what's this about? What's this about? What do you know about this? What do you know about this? And I was like, look, let me explain it to you. And so he asked me about gender reassignment surgery, and I compared it to gastric bypass surgery because I was like, just people who are like.
We'll cut that out, Nicole, okay?
Yeah, whatever you want to do. But that's because it's like everybody's got their thing. Everybody's like, oh, I don't feel like this, and I want to change to be this. And for some people, it's gender, and for some people it's weight, and for some people it's hairstyles. It's there's a spectrum of where, and so I was like, that was how I compared it, and in telling my dad about it, I'm like, it's sort of like this. We had an uncle who looked at himself, said, I don't feel heavy, I want to be thin, and he.
Well, I don't know that the analogy is a perfect one, but
Well, I would say it is.
Stuttering is no longer an official diagnosis according to the DSM. Instead, the name of the disorder has been changed to childhood onset fluency disorder.
No.
Here's the thing. Here's the deal. Joe Biden stutters.
all right.
Is a fluency disorder.
No. Nobody was around who is currently alive for his childhood. So we get to say stutter.
No, I just want to address your.
I knew they would change it. It's like they
Well,
and eventually, like, okay.
My thing, it's all verbiage. I'm
so-
like, if you want to go from which is 4 syllables to Asian, which is 2 syllables, boom, I'm in on Asian.
I even hearing the word is so jarring.
It
now.
is
It's
jarring,
amazing.
right?
It's amazing how jarring it was
When I said that, I was discussing rugs, by the way.
when I remember that there was no other word. Like, it really was. It wasn't like a word that people used as a insult. Anyway,
I'm just excited for the video snippet of this podcast that has me comparing to Asians and this face, and it's just like, all right, here we go.
We won't do that to you. Go ahead.
Well,
first, I just if I could address
if it gets more views.
Noam's monologue about how they changed the word.
Now, you know what a monologue means that I was talking too much.
Well, you were talking quite a bit, but
soliloquy means that it was beautiful.
one article
Filibuster.
one article suggested that we don't say commit suicide. The fact is, a lot of people view suicide as a selfish act. It's very misunderstood. A lot of people are ignorant about mental illness, like Noam Dworman on our previous episode, who think you should just buck up and suck it up.
That's not what I said. I said if you don't actually have some. I was saying if Bruce Springsteen doesn't actually have clinical depression, like something, and he's like upset with his life, the best thing I could say to him is says, get over yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, you're Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
You're indulging yourself. It's not like The Godfather. You can start by being a man. I don't think that's necessarily bad advice to people. Sometimes people can get caught up, especially
but
when
I would
people
not
who are
advise-
actually suffering from.
Yes, but the point is that there's a dynamic. There's a
I-
dynamic when you have sycophants around you and you're
Yes.
famous. And everybody caters to your every whim, and you begin to get enamored with yourself. And I feel a little under the weather today. Oh, what's the matter? That's awful. Can I do anything for you? And that and you can get addicted.
Yeah, I don't
to
know
that.
anybody that's talking about that in their biography. But in any case, or autobiography, Bruce Springsteen brought it up in his autobiography because he was suffering deeply. Anyway,
What was he suffering?
Depression.
But what was he? Okay, but was it? What was bothering him?
I don't know. I didn't psychoanalyze.
He didn't mention it.
I will say this.
He was depressed. I mean, if you because you're so ignorant about depression, you don't realize it doesn't have to be attached to anything specifically. It's just a overwhelming sense of sadness and worthlessness.
It has,
And
Which, by the way,
Now he's speaking for himself here.
and it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with your life situation. Although, let's be honest about it, our life situations are all pretty shitty, considering there's no God and we're all dying, and that includes Bruce Springsteen.
now that's where I draw the line.
Now that's
No
a clip.
God.
By the way, anyway, so suggesting that we say die by suicide doesn't seem to me ridiculous. Now, as a general matter, words change. Okay, Afro-American used to be accepted. Used to be accepted.
Cut it out. Cut that out.
Yeah.
You have any beef with that, or would you prefer to go back to those words?
To which words?
Are you outraged that it's no longer an acceptable word? I mean,
We're not in a 2-shot on this, are we?
I don't know.
Good. All right. It's just-
Words change, and I mean, it doesn't seem to be an overwhelming burden to adapt to it.
I think the difficulty is that words are like clothes. People can wear them and influence people to believe that they're a certain way, and people can see you wearing them and make a decision that you're making a certain statement. But the fact is, they're just shelter. They're just a container to contain the actual thing. And
Right, but
people who don't analyze words.
So go ahead.
People who don't analyze words, which I would argue that most comedians overanalyze words, if anything. If there's any error, it's on the side of overanalysis. But if people don't analyze words, they can be fooled. You can fool people with words all the time, and by throwing this word being dangerous and this word should be, used, even though it's legitimately offensive to a group of people. Both of those are wrong arguments. I think that words get weaponized the same way.
If I would give you my thumbnail, having lived through it, sketch of what happened with that word that you said that starts with N and ends with O.
Okay.
You couldn't find a word that rhymed with it?
There aren't any.
So when I was a kid, that was the polite term. And you hear a million politicians' speeches from that era.
Yeah.
We talk about the black community as the community. That changed during the civil rights era, and people started that and I believe that organically came up within the black community itself, that they liked the term black. James Brown has, "When I say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud," all such things, and so that became the preferred term, and then the other word kind of faded away. It was never derogatory or considered derogatory. Now it's so uncommon that people assume it's derogatory. So that was a more organic thing. The Asian thing, it literally changed overnight, and it was different. It didn't, as I understand, it was not part of the expression of a movement. It was more like Latinx, where the people actually who were being described by the term were almost the last people to get that thing. It wasn't like out of the Asian community said, "We don't like this word anymore."
But that's not the case with suicide.
Well,
I mean,
these people are all dead.
I can't ask them.
Suicide victims.
But there's not. But there was. It's not like one
was too
guy
easy. Yeah.
wrote an article. I mean, this has been like sort of a general movement.
I didn't know that.
Well, I think you were sent a few articles that this wasn't like, and there's like a reason for it. Also,
Is the following true? This whole idea of changing a word to describe something and then making people who still use the old word the object of ridicule or criticism. This really exists on the left.
No, I think it's across the board.
Can you give me a right-wing word which has changed? Right-wing people say you don't say that anymore.
Woke.
No, woke didn't change.
Woke. They changed woke. They won't change woke from something where it's empathetic to a group of people who have been suppressed in some way.
No.
And then it became this whole thing.
I'll let you think about that and retract it. That is not an
I
example.
stand by it.
I
stand upon it as a soapbox.
That is not an example of that. It's part of the politics, and not just a moderate. It's part of progressive left-wing politics to use words and the changing of words and the cordoning off words as off limits as part of the battle.
I have one. Wait a
That may
second.
be, but words do evolve.
Yeah.
And
Yes, words do evolve.
I grew up
So,
in
kids who have mental disabilities.
No.
Mental disabilities.
Can
there
you
was
say that? You can say that? Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
No, you don't use that word anymore. You don't call people, or not even kids, but people with Down syndrome. There was a word that's now considered derogatory that used to be used.
the M word. I assume you're.
The
oh wow,
R word.
that's a whole,
No,
that's
no,
a whole,
there's an
that's a
M?
whole step.
Oh, no, that's
beyond.
That's crazy because the term, and I used to hear this word in grammar school. The term that they used to use for Down syndrome was horrifying. It was Mongolian idiot. They would call them Mongolian idiots.
They would also use
Now-
the word, which
No,
is
that's not for Down syndrome.
wait, yes, it was for,
Among other, that's for.
it was for that, and it was more broad. But that's a word
When I was a
that
kid, that
is
was
not
broadly
used. You don't use that word anymore. It's considered a very derogatory term.
Right. Now now whatever the word that replaces it. Let's
mentally challenged.
Or
special.
Whatever it is. Isn't it true that in 10 years' time, that word will become imbued with some derogatory sense because it's the concept which people are trying to run away from. It's not the phonetic label that was put on. There was never anything about the word retard that was derogatory. That was the term. Now, Mongolian idiot is a horrifying term in so many ways. It's a cruel term on its face. It's comparing them to the looks of Mongolians, is making fun of their appearance, and also has the word idiot in it. So, of course, this was a bad.
I never heard that. That's awful.
This was an awful term. Or you get that. The word sounds horrible to our ears now, like the word sounds horrible to our ears, and you can't undo that. That's so you can't fight City Hall. I'm not suggesting going back because the connotation is there. But
Also,
but there's no real logic to the fact that the connotation is
Well,
there.
But also,
I think part of it is
I just want to defend myself
He's
here
a
for a
sexist
second.
too, you know. He talks about
you're making it like they say this and then like I swallow these concepts
it's
like
almost like the
whole
Matrix
hog.
with you.
No, but it's like
A meme. You just see a meme, and you're like, I understand. I no longer say. It's literally.
I am a fan of a good meme, but I think
no
that
longer say committed suicide.
there is. I mean, there's good explanation not to say committed suicide.
Oh, yes, I know. It's for somehow for hundreds of years it never occurred to anybody that you can't say committed suicide.
Dan explained it because
Because in the particular case of suicide, there's a lot of misunderstanding. And people, anytime celebrity commits suicide, I see it on social media all the time, how selfish they were to have done
I've
that.
seen so many
There's
memes
nothing
about that.
People are not going to think it's any less selfish because they say he died by suicide. They say he died by suicide.
Well, it might open up a discussion. I don't know. I agree with you. I'm not going to chastise or reprimand people who use the old language. But I don't have a problem with the evolution of language.
Now, can I make a related point? And I know Periel may not follow this.
We need to give Jason Salmon a little more airtime.
No, today I believe is the 75th anniversary of the State of Israel.
Correct.
And people were talking about Israel today on the radio, and it really made me think of this correlation and causation issue. So Israel is now one of the most wealthy countries in the world, has most of the one of the most technologically adept countries. It has one of the most. I mean, Israel's doing amazing in so many ways. If Israel were a totally failed state, people would say, well, what do you expect? This was an oppressed people who came over from the Holocaust with nothing on their back. They were victims of colonialism. There's a desert. They have no natural resources. You could just pile on all the reasons why. Of course, that's why they're doing terribly. Look at what, but that's not the case. And maybe even these handicaps, or can you say handicap? These challenges
obstacles,
were part of the reason that they overcame. I don't know. It's like Israel was never known, didn't even have a nation for 2,000 years. They certainly didn't have an army, and now they have maybe the best army in the world. Like they rose to that also.
Man for man. I mean, it's
So the point is that just because you can point to, you can make connections between things, but you really don't know if they're true.
You're saying that intellectually I might not be able to follow that logic?
No, I'm kidding. I'm saying why point. So another example was Trump was never anti-vaccine, right? Trump was Operation Warp Speed. He loves the vaccine. He was so proud of his vaccine.
Yeah.
And then somehow all the Trump followers became totally anti-vax.
Well, he hid that he got the vaccine. That didn't.
No, he
help.
bragged about it in the debates when they
No. He talked about the vaccine stuff. Like he hid when he got the vaccine. He didn't talk about
that's
it.
Not true.
Later. Until
that's not
later.
True. Only later he. No, as a matter of fact, even it's just not true. During the debates, he bragged that there's going to be a vaccine by the election day, and the New York Times fact-checked him. He loved Operation Warp Speed. He was never anti-vax. He might have later on toned it down because his followers had become so anti-vax. But my point is this: if Trump had been anti-vax, and then all his followers were just as anti-vax as they are now, everybody say, well, of course. It's Trump. He made them anti-vax. And if somebody says, well, maybe they're anti-vax because Trump said that stuff, but maybe they'd still be anti-vax even if Trump had taken credit for the vaccine. People say, are you fucking kidding me? You expect me to believe? You really don't? Isn't it obvious that he's responsible for the fact that they're anti-vax? But the fact is causation can be so mysterious, and you can make your best guess. So having said all that, I don't believe that these words have anything to do with anything. Nobody does or doesn't do anything because of some dumb word. You can draw an association between committed and people don't understand. They think it's selfish, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's true. Do you think it actually has any real world impact?
Well,
I think not.
I don't.
Is there a word?
Yeah, sorry,
Go ahead.
Jason. Jason, you've
You're
been
the guest. Go ahead,
under.
Is there a word that like that you think currently is undergoing that
Well, I found out this committed.
Okay.
I don't know if that's going to catch on. Again, I don't think I haven't heard that catch
It
on.
already caught on.
Yeah,
It's a
it's already
thing.
fine. Yes,
if you were talking to somebody and look, I don't know what
Right,
I've never heard of the committed suicide thing myself. So I am as
well, look at
caught off guard as you. Yeah.
No surprise.
Look at me. No chance I'm going to commit suicide. That's or I'm sorry.
Well, if you do, it'll be with a shotgun.
Yeah, I don't commit to anything. That's the word that really gets me on that phrase. But if you were talking to somebody and you're like, oh, they committed suicide, and they're like, look, if you don't mind, my son,
Died by
died that
suicide.
way. If you don't mind not saying committed, because it if that were happening in front of you, would you be like,
Yeah,
all right, I'm cool with
it. Of course,
I know. Well, that's the thing is that when I look at a word, I'm just giving you a baseline for how I look at a word. Is if I feel like it's something that I can be empathetic to, then I will do it. If it's something that I think is pure absurdity, here's where I don't agree. I did a show where for a college. And it was me and an Asian comic friend of mine and one other guy, and they were offended by everybody. And I'm like, what offended you? And they were like, that one guy was making fun of Asian people. I'm like, he was making fun of his parents. I'm like, you can't be offended by an Asian man making fun of his Asian mother for how she raised him, because that is very specific.
You're making a good point. So first of all, I do use the words that everybody expects you, because if you dig in on this, like I said, you can't find City Hall. It becomes like a political statement.
Yeah.
I have no problem. I'm totally, like I said, it sounds horrible to say that O word. Anyway,
Yeah.
I get it, because but the movement to change the word is what I
Right.
object to. People, they don't even know the history of the word, so the word has a connotation now. And if you use it anyway, you're choosing. I want people to hear me say something that I know is going to bother them.
Right.
I'm not that type of guy. I'm happy. I don't care about the words, but this whole movement to take words and change them, and it becomes a never-ending quest.
Yeah.
And I'll put it this way: there will never be a time when these people who think that way say, "Okay, we're good now. The language is perfect.
Yeah.
Just leave it alone. Let's just disband. Let's just abandon this.
Yeah.
Our work is done here. We've cleaned up the language." No, it's just nature.
No.
They will always find new words, and they'll always find new reasons to be offended, because they're seeking out the offense. They're seeking out the ability to put other people on the defensive. They're seeking out the ability to make people uncomfortable. They
Well,
love the endorphins of
maybe.
being offended. It's all disgusting.
I
And they
agree
wanna
with-
bully.
Maybe, and that might be the true
Outrage
in many
is
cases.
a currency.
On the
for
other
sure
hand,
right now.
sometimes these word changes might have like committed suicide. There's a legitimate explanation. It's not just a random thing. Maybe try to phrase it in a way that makes the person who committed suicide sound more like a victim. That's rational. It's logical. It's not designed to shame you. Maybe it is, but there's a rational basis.
They're victims.
Yes,
Yes.
they're victims. They're victims.
I will
That's
say
the
that-
whole point.
That's the whole point, is
I
that
will
they're
say the
victims
first-
of their mental illness.
The first person
and not everybody gets that. And because not everybody gets that,
I didn't
it's
get
worth a discussion. and they're not, you're making it sound like people change the language just so that Noam Dworman will have to keep up with all this shit, and they could say, hey, Noam Dworman, he used a bad word. Maybe there's some of that, but some of these are rational. What do you think about when somebody dies? When a member of the Comedy Cellar community dies, Esty calls me up. She says so and so passed. She doesn't say so and so's dead.
Yeah, I don't like the word pass.
You don't like the word.
What do you like? Kick the bucket?
Died. He died.
Right, died is fine, but the point about suicide specifically that Dan's saying is true. There is very serious misunderstanding around suicide. People who die by suicide are often thought of that they've done something selfish
That's
or
not going to change. That's my point. It's not going to change.
I don't know. I think I don't know. Maybe it is going to change. It's still kind of like a taboo subject.
Well, things do change.
Do you think that
Not gonna change 'cause
and
the word.
I would put this out to you as well, and I mean just in being around comedy in general, like doing comedy and being around it. Do you think that has increased your valuation of words? Like, are words, you think they're more powerful or less powerful because of what you know about how people shape words into narratives in their comedy? Do you think comedy has made them seem more valuable, more powerful, or less powerful?
That's a good question.
Yeah, I don't think. Well, it's good. I've been a comic more than half my life. It's hard to remember what I was like before, but no, I don't think so.
I don't. I feel like to me, words are not powerful at all. But can be used for good and bad.
As comics,
in a lot
of course,
ways.
we have to. Very oftentimes, one word can make a difference between a joke that
absolutely.
doesn't do very well.
But what's crazy is both of those words mean the same thing, and you're like, but you know that if I just change this word, that will change the entire way you perceive this entire idea.
Right.
Because the words.
But
although they might mean the same thing, their connotation, their impact.
Right,
Sure,
right.
But all of that
opposite.
is beyond the word itself. The word itself technically is the same meaning.
Right.
But you know how the word will affect somebody, and that's what makes good comedy, I think. I mean, for me, that's always been the challenge of comedy.
words are extremely important.
They're important, but they're not powerful on their own. It's the understanding of how you use them
like
that makes them powerful.
It's
like a bullet's not powerful until you
Right.
put it into a gun and
Right.
point it at somebody, you know?
I guess I would say that on the right, what they do dig in on, and this is disgusting, is on pronouns. Like when they want to call somebody who's transgender by their biological pronoun.
Yeah.
What is the matter with these people?
on the right. I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
I think it's the culture of outrage.
So you're
I
agreeing
think
that
that's
in
the
this,
whole
in
thing.
this, you're agreeing that the evolution of words, in this case, the evolution of pronouns, is valid.
My philosophy on pronouns.
I know, but you want your philosophy on
is that that's only words that people use about you when you're not around, like in reference to you when you're not around. It's like, to me, it's pronouns to the left is like flags to the right. It's like you're putting a lot of importance on something that's basically a symbol for something that's the more important thing. So a flag is a symbol of a country, a pronoun is a symbol of a proper noun named person.
So I find the they thing, difficult to wrap my head around and to really understand, and it doesn't really work. And you have sentences that you sincerely and literally don't even know what the sentences mean. But what I'm saying is that if you have a trans woman who is living the life of a woman, and you purposely refer to her as he, that is aggressive.
Yeah,
it's a nasty fucking aggressive thing to do, as if it really hurts, and that's that it's hateful.
Yeah.
That's not, and there's a whole, but we've talked about the whole other issues on that whole thing, which I'm like on sports.
Yeah.
I'm
open to the.
I'm very open to the idea that
maybe
biological women should only compete with biological women.
Yeah.
But that's not mean.
Yeah. No.
That's not mean.
Yeah, I think taking that, it's all based on the culture of outrage. I mean, it helps people be outraged if you go, you know what, he did this, he won the women's thing, and it's like, all right, you can have a legitimate discussion. I grew up in athletics and sports, and there's a legitimate discussion about somebody, even if they take hormones, which they don't know. I mean, which, by the way, like the NCAA, the woman who transitioned to a woman and won the NCAA,
the swimmer,
set out for 2 years, followed all of the rules. Like the NCAA rules allowed all of that, and I think there's a legitimate discussion from both sides, but you have to eliminate the outrage. The second you throw in the outrage, the second you start calling the swimmer a he, and the second you start saying that no matter what anybody transitions, they should still be able to do every single thing they would have been able to do in their other gender, I think both of those are like a little unreasonable. I think there's a discussion, but that's the problem. Discussion is boring.
The idea, the idea that a trans woman boxer
Yeah,
could be
is
allowed
that a thing?
to kick the shit out of a bylaw. It's just
Well,
Well, no,
that's a bridge too far for me.
Especially in something that is a one-on-one. I mean, like a trans woman swimmer. Like as much as that is an advantage, you're like, well, it's not endangering
well, look,
the well-being of
doesn't seem
another
fair.
if,
swimmer.
if they have
no,
a
no, I
biolog-
get
if
that.
they have a biological advantage, I'm
Well, the difference.
as is Noam open to the idea that maybe they shouldn't compete.
I
But if
think-
you can convince me that they don't have a biological advantage,
I think the weird thing
You
is that nobody understands fully the science of the hormones. But the weird thing about that one is that was a fully grown male athlete that transitioned, and that is where you're like, well, physiologically, the man's body is longer and now the muscle mass went down significantly when the hormones were taken, but your body's already longer and it's got a different perspective, and you've trained as a man. That's like somebody training on steroids and stops taking steroids. They still got significantly stronger while training on steroids.
yeah, I sometimes wonder if back in high school,
So
if I
they're-
had transitioned to a woman,
Yeah.
to a girl, and competed on the women's swim team, if people would be outraged that I was losing by less.
But I can't
you get more spots. I know.
process in my head how anyone would believe that somebody's like, I want to win this swim race, especially swimming. I'm like, because that's not a big money sport. Because I was like, I want to win this swim race so badly that I am going to change genders, because I just can't imagine I can't get a tattoo because I don't think there's a design out there that would make me do something to my skin. So like for me, I'm like, I don't understand how anybody would.
I don't think people would transition just to win a race.
Right,
but
right,
I
but
suppose I can't rule out the possibility.
But that's the thing is like I'm so far removed from fully understanding that even any opinion I offer on it is an ill-informed opinion, because I can't conceive of that at its base.
To
That's
the extent
for me.
There seems to be some sort of social contagion. I mean, without getting to the trans thing specifically,
Yeah.
we know that sometimes a high-profile suicide will all of a sudden spark a bunch of suicides. People, so if there can be a social contagion to die by suicide,
Good.
see how awkward that sounds.
Progress.
if there could be a social contagion to
Take one's own life.
take one's own life, then you could imagine a social contagion for any lesser thing, presuming that killing
Yes.
oneself is the ultimate thing, right? So anything is possible in certain
Yeah.
numbers. But there was just a story today about some marathon, I think in England, where the man had been a back of the pack runner,
Yeah.
and in his first race as a woman, he led the pack.
Yeah.
The women. There's been.
Did you hear the story about the woman that transitioned to a male and won swimming stuff? Because there's a real athlete that did that in college too.
I haven't heard that.
So I mean, well,
was that one of Periel's memes? Because
yeah,
I didn't hear that
How
one.
much
We should
of a-
pause and Google for that one.
it's funny because I was legitimately I was thinking of a way to like go up there and make a joke, like a very anti-trans sounding joke, and I'm like, and this woman
This is outrageous.
transitioned to a man. It's outrageous. She should have been competing with the women.
But I would say
Do
this.
you as any getting back to Biscuits and Gravity, and
Yes.
before we wrap things up,
No. My
do you-
comedy is very.
do you have any trans humor? A lot of people.
The part where I explain gender to my dad is trying to say that.
How long
it's-
ago is this, though? Is this
It's a
before-
long time ago, but I grew up Generation X, and I think there's an interesting component of being and it's part of a Gen X joke that I have on the album. I've got this bit. It's like a 12-minute bit.
What's the definition of Generation X?
Generation X is
like
born in 1965 to 1980, basically.
Well, that's
like,
a big,
but
it's a big span.
It is a big span, but that's sort of breaking it up, that baby boomers and then Generation X and then millennials and then Gen Z, and then whoever's out there now is, I don't know what generation they are, but
I think
They don't like the word generation.
it's regeneration. They're regeneration. But like I had my Gen X joke is basically talking about like I grew up watching Boy George and listening to David Bowie and listening to Prince. So gender fluidity for my entire childhood was just like this is where all the great music comes from.
Right.
So for me to be able to empathize with a transgender person sort of saying I might not be this thing that we're all supposed to be, I'm like, oh, that makes sense because neither was Prince, and I love Purple Rain. So
Where'd you shoot it?
I shot it out in Pottstown down in Pennsylvania with Soldiers. They got this new thing that was like a barn structure, this new venue, and I was like, it feels home. It feels home.
Jason, Salmon, Biscuits and Gravity. Do you mind? No, if we wrap it up, we do have to do a bonus show, so I like to keep it tight.
Let's wrap it up.
Okay, Biscuits and Gravity coming soon to YouTube. That's how it's being done
Yeah,
now.
it is.
It's all do it yourself, and you seem do it like the do it yourself look to you.
I do.
Look like you
I
know
do.
your way around a
I'm
tool.
I'm not nearly as good around tools as I look like I am.
Well,
but-
Jason, and you're not as conservative as you look. Jason, Salmon,
DIY termination. I like the ring of that.
DI, do it yourself termination.
As opposed to suicide. He died of a
Okay.
DIY
Well,
termination.
well, that's something to consider.
Self-termination.
Thank you, Jason
Self-termination.
Salmon, for being with us.
Thank
Periel
you.
Aschenbrand,
Thank
our
you for
producer.
having me.
Thank you. Thank you, Noam, of course, without whom none of this would be possible. And Nicole Lyons, our audio wizard. Thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.